Hello, today I'm going to be looking at the poem Valentine and a little bit about context, but mostly about analysing the poem because that's going to help you most in your GCSE. So, a little bit of context about this is it's written by Carol Ann Duffy, and she is the first woman, the first Scot, and the first openly LGBTQ plus person that has held the position of Poet Laureate. And she had that position from 2009 to 2019. It's a position that's currently owned by Simon Armitage, who wrote The Manhunt. So there's two Poet Laureates in this collection, at least. It's an honorary position, and what it really means is that she's a very well known and well thought of poet. Um, so you only need context in how it really relates to the poem. Uh, she was born in Scotland and then moved to England at the age of 7. She's trained as a teacher and then became a published poet. And she now lectures in poetry mostly. She specialises in writing kind of monologue poems from the point of view of maybe disturbed individuals. Not that Valentine is from a disturbed individual necessarily, although our analysis might show that maybe towards the end. There's a strong focus on feminism. Obviously, as she is a member of the LGBTQ plus community, and this poem was written probably, I think it was published in a 1993 collection. So we're talking about the 90s, where in even though things were more liberal, it's not as liberal as it is today. So having an LGBTQ plus relationship is possibly seen as not the norm when she was writing, and therefore her talking about a kind of a non-traditional view of love is what her poem is about. So you may want to link this to the fact that she's a member of the LGBTQ plus community as context. But with no further ado, we will move on if it allows me to. Okay, let's just try. Okay, I'm moving on to actually annotating. Bear with my rubbish pen that annotates. Okay, so the poem is called Valentine. The title isn't on here, but that is the title. So that probably already sets up expectations in your mind of what it's going to be about. We all associate Valentine with Valentine's Day and the traditional images of love that it brings up. Red roses, gifts like chocolates, romantic dates, um, flowers, chocolates, teddy bears, all those things that you might associate with Valentine's Day. And this is going to subvert those expectations. And subvert means turn upside down, turn it around. Okay. First of all, looking, as I always do, at the structure of the poem and the rhyme scheme. Well, looking at the rhyme scheme, heart, onion, paper, light, love, here, tears. There's a bit of a rhyme there. Lover, reflection, grief, truthful, kissogram, onion, lips, faithful, it, ring, like, lethal, fingers, knife. Not really. It's an unrhymed poem, although you may hear a couple of rhymes within it. Perhaps ring, knife, no, like knife is what I was thinking of, with the assonance here. There's little hints of rhyme, but not really. It's an unrhymed poem, and you can link that to a non-traditional love poem, perhaps, um, in the way that she is perhaps expressing a non-traditional view of love. The only other thing to really say about structure, well, not the only other thing, but the only thing I'm going to say about structure is that there's not specific stanzas in like there's no quatrains, couplets, things like that. There's the odd line on its own here, here, and the odd completely line that just has one word. So you'll get different line lengths, and perhaps think about why those lines are standing out on their own. Okay, some lines are deliberately made to stand out for emphasis. And you might look at what those lines are. The telling us what she doesn't think Valentine's is, or what she doesn't think love is. Not. These are not the traditional view of love. That's what she's trying to say here. Okay, and then perhaps the lines that are just on their own: here, take it, and lethal. Obviously, that last one is bringing in a very sinister edge with that just one word, lethal. And here, and take it, these are both imperatives, commands. Perhaps a bit of an aggressive giving of the gift, okay? So you could think about that when you come to analyse those particular parts of the poem, but that is the overall structure. I think I'm going to get rid of that so I have room for the language. What I always advise my students to do, but you can do it however you like, is talk. Obviously, you will be comparing this to another poem in the Edexcel exam anyway. And therefore, I always advise to start with the rhyme scheme and the structure. Compare the rhyme scheme and the structure of this with the rhyme scheme and structure of another poem from the collection, making sure that you are linking to whatever the question's asking you. So if it's asking you how they compare a negative view of love, for example, then link the rhyme scheme or the structure to how this could be a negative view of love. And that is up to you how you think it could be. But you do need to link it, otherwise there's no point saying it. Do not make a point that you can't link to the question of how this shows the poet's ideas of love. Okay. So, as I've said, going into the language of this poem, not a red rose or a satin heart. These are traditional things linked with love, or lovey-dovey kind of relationships, traditionally linked to love, I'm going to put. But she immediately tells us not, and there's repetition here. To tell us, to emphasize how much she doesn't think love should be this. Repetition for emphasis. And then she brings in what will become the extended metaphor throughout this poem. It's a metaphor that continues in different ways, but it's the same metaphor. I give you an onion. Traditionally called a conceit, kind of a surprising idea or metaphor. Metaphor extended. And at first, the reader thinks, an onion? Why would you want an onion for Valentine's Day? Well, by the end of this poem, you will want people to give you onions for Valentine's Day. And she starts the metaphors straight away. It is a moon wrapped in brown paper. A moon, traditional image of romance, the moonlight. And of course, it's echoing what an onion looks like. Wrapped in brown paper is the skin of the onion. Okay, once you unwrap it, metaphorically, peel it, you get what looks like a moon, this kind of translucent white globe. And she's telling us why the onion should actually be seen as a symbol of love or of a relationship. Another metaphor here, you would say it's personification, because it promises light. Okay, like the onion can make a promise. And I guess what she's saying here is the relationship could be promising, or the person could make a lot of promises at the beginning. And we hope that every relationship is a promise of light, of positivity, of joy, of good things. Perhaps that's what she means. And then similarly here, like the careful undressing of love. And this simile brings up a few images. Firstly, perhaps a literal undressing. So are we talking about sensual or even sexual imagery of undressing the person you're in love with, which is usually part of a relationship? Or perhaps it's more metaphorical. You carefully undress love as a concept. you get to know it. It becomes more intimate as you go. You get to know the person more and more as you go deeper into the relationship. Perhaps that's what that simile is trying to say as well. Of course, I'm using the words, I'm not using definites, and you should not use definites in your poetry exam. Perhaps Duffy is trying to say, maybe this could mean one interpretation of, we don't know, we are not her. Importantly, even if we were her, this is art. Poetry is art. So your interpretation is as valid as someone else's interpretation, as long as you can back it up with sensible evidence from the poem and explain your interpretation of it. Okay. Okay, here comes the first of our one word lines here. Could be just a statement here, or it could be you are giving the person the onion here, like you must take this. So it starts to be maybe a little bit controlling, perhaps. A little controlling, I'm going to put. And then comes the next metaphor about the onion. Metaphor and then immediately into a simile. So this two lines contain a metaphor and a simile. It will blind you with tears like a lover. So you could talk about obviously how love can be sad or make you sad. A lover can make you cry either with joy or with sorrow. So it's open to interpretation. The word blind you with tears as well. If you zoomed into that word though, not it will just make you cry, it will blind you with tears. You know the saying that love is blind, as in when you are in love with somebody, um, it can sometimes close you off to your, to being sensible, to logic, and make you do things that you would never otherwise have done because you're just blind with love. So again, there's positivity and negativity within that image. This is a poem all about the positives and negatives of love. Again, it will make your reflection a wobbling photo of grief. And she does say the word grief here, meaning tears of sorrow. Another metaphor here of looking in the mirror and your eyes full of tears and your own reflection therefore wobbles in front of you. Again, you could look at that wobbling. You could zoom into that word or that word as well in that metaphor to talk about how love can maybe distort reality, distort your own image of yourself. Okay. I personally think this poem has possibly more negatives in than positives, but Duffy believes, as in the next line, which is on its own, that she is trying to be realistic about love, not about all these people who are idealistic about love and overly romantic and who believes it's all this lovely kittens and rainbows. She says, I'm trying to be truthful. Love is not just that. Love can have its negatives as well as its positives. Love has hard times as well as good times. And she puts that on its own. But it's also a kind of an apology, as if, she's saying, look, I'm just trying to be truthful. Come on, pen, write the G. Thank you so much. And then again, she goes to state again the repetition of that not that happened there. It's not a cute card or a kissogram. You might not know what a kissogram is. That's a very kind of old-fashioned thing, maybe kind of 70s, 80s. It's a very weird concept where you would pay someone and they would go round to your love's house, knock on the door, they would answer the door and they would sing a little song and give them a kiss and say happy birthday or whatever. Very weird. Don't know why you would want to do that. But anyway, that was a kind of quite popular thing that people sent. I'll send you a kissogram. On Valentine's Day. Okay, then she asserts again a complete repetition of this line here. I give you an onion. You could say that the repetition here is proof of her determination of this is a good gift. This is what a relationship is. Repetition to show her, I don't know, even her defiance in the face of what people think a normal relationship is. I'm not going to give you that. I'm going to still give you an onion. Okay. And then here you get the personification coming in. And I think the poem gets darker from this point. Its fierce kiss will stay on your lips. Okay. You could even say fierce kiss is an oxymoron. It's fierce kiss. And you could talk about how that is a symbol of aggression as well as love, perhaps. And she then goes on to talk about the two qualities that she thinks she has with her partner and that the onion has: possessive and faithful. Well, you might think that that's a juxtaposition, a contrast. It's a good thing to be faithful. Is it a good thing to be possessive in love? Possibly not. Well, I would say not. And that kind of comes in quite strongly there under the fierce kiss. I am possessive and faithful as we are for as long as we are. Um, she's talking about how when you taste an onion, the taste of it stays with you for a long time. And she's talking about how relationships can also do that. You can remember that person for a long time, or the relationship may last a long time. And then it becomes even more aggressive with the take it, this imperative here, almost forcing, just like the fierce kiss or the being possessive. So in my eyes, this gets more a, a bit of a darker tone of love. It's platinum loops. That is a metaphor. Of course, they're not made of platinum, but platinum is one of the most precious metals. I think it's the most precious metal, very expensive. And she links that to how the onion rings get smaller and smaller as you cut the onion. And in the middle, there'll be a small ring, and it would be like a wedding ring. And then she says, if you like, this is a kind of casual proposal. Shrink to a wedding ring, if you like. I mean, if you want to link to context here, in 1993, if you were LGBTQ plus, a woman couldn't marry a woman and a man couldn't marry a man legally. So perhaps they're being casual about marriage because they can't get married, depending on the sex of the person she's talking about here. So you could possibly link to the fact that only heterosexual couples could get married in this time, or only a man could only marry a woman. Um, so there's a thing about weddings there as well. And then you've got your other one word line in here, lethal. I mean, lethal meaning it could kill you, or it's almost certainly will kill you. Okay, so this is again when possibly the poem turns most dark. Still talking about the onion as love. Its scent will cling to your fingers, cling to your knife. You've got the repetition of cling here, and that really links to that possessive word earlier. Something that doesn't want to let go, clingy, clinging, being clingy in a relationship, not seen as a good thing. And of course, she's talking here about the smell of the onion now, that you can still smell it on your fingers. You can still, the scent of it will cling to the knife. When you cut something else, you'll still taste the onion. And again, linking that to relationships, when one ends, you might still be thinking of that person before in a good way or a bad way. It will always follow you. But the last image is a knife, and she said lethal at the beginning of this. It perhaps hints at violence within a relationship. Okay, so I'm going to finish there. Lots to unpack there, lots to talk about in an exam. If you wanted to focus on this poem, there's lots of quotes that you can hopefully remember quite easily. It is a moon wrapped in brown paper. It will blind you with tears. Possessive and faithful, fierce kiss, platinum loops, cling to your knife. If you just need to remember a few short phrases and quotes, remember what technique they are, and then say something about them, and of course compare to a different poem. As this is a poem about the positives and negatives of a relationship, it links well with something like neutral tones, which is more about the negatives of a relationship. It also links well with I Want to Be Yours, because that's also a series of metaphors, but different metaphors in there, and again, negative and positive. And perhaps I Want to Be Yours has quite a lot of possessiveness in it, like this does as well. So that's just a couple of ideas. I hope that was helpful.